Some people don't need to speak to change the room. They walk in and something shifts. They don't shout. They don't argue. They don't ask for attention. They simply exist with such calm, such presence, that the environment begins to bend around them. They're not loud, but they're unmistakable. And when they choose to walk away, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, it's like a void opens. People start to question themselves. They feel the absence. They feel the power. That kind of control isn't accidental. It's cultivated. What would happen if you stopped reacting so quickly to every little thing? If you didn't explain yourself all the time? If you didn't jump to respond, to fix, to prove? What if instead you just watched? What if you chose silence? What if you stopped being so accessible, emotionally, mentally, energetically? The answer is simple. The people around you would feel it, deeply. Because the moment you stop handing over your emotional responses to everyone who demands them, the game changes. People don't manipulate your logic. They manipulate your reactions, your anger, your need for closure, your desperation to be understood. That's how you've been controlled your whole life, not by force, but by emotion. And the day you start pulling your energy back is the day they lose their grip. You don't need to cut people off with rage. You don't need to announce your transformation. You simply need to stop offering yourself like you're infinite, because you're not. Your time, your energy, your presence, they are not unlimited. And the people who truly value you will recognize that. The rest will punish you for pulling back. But that punishment, that guilt they try to feed you, that's not love. That's dependency. Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead to an understanding of ourselves." Now ask yourself, who gets irritated when you stop answering? Who tries to provoke you when you retreat into stillness? Who accuses you of changing the moment you protect your peace? These people don't want you. They want access to your emotional system, to your reactions, to your attention. And when they lose that access, they start to unravel. You were taught that being emotionally available is a sign of strength, that always being present means you care, that saying yes makes you a good person. But you weren't told that this mindset slowly erodes you, that overavailability becomes a kind of silent self-destruction, because when you're always available, you're never yourself. You say yes when your body says no. You explain yourself to people who've already made up their mind. You respond to every message, every call, every plea for attention, even when you're running on empty. And that's when you realize it's not kindness, it's fear. Fear of disappointing, fear of being alone, fear of being misunderstood. But here's the truth no one told you. When you're too available, you become invisible. You become predictable. And everything predictable becomes disposable. People stop valuing you, not because you're not worthy, but because they don't have to earn you. That's not their fault, it's yours. You handed out parts of yourself like samples in a grocery store. You made your energy so easy to consume that no one questioned the cost. And the worst part? You thought that being endlessly present for others would make them show up for you. But they didn't. They never will. Because what's abundant is never respected. Carl Jung called it the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted. And that mask is often built on over-accommodation. You say it's okay when you're breaking. You smile through the ache. You stay quiet just to avoid conflict. And over time, the world begins to interact with the mask, not the person. You become loved for the performance, not for who you really are. And that's where the sickness starts. Every time you overextend, you're abandoning yourself. Every time you let guilt override your instincts, you're betraying your boundaries. Every time you say yes while dying to say no, you're weakening your own foundation. You want to know why you're tired all the time? Why you're resentful? Why you're anxious in the relationships that once brought you comfort? Because you're being drained. Your emotional availability has become your prison. You're not being appreciated. You're being harvested. You are the comfort, the therapist, the backup plan, the fixer, the one who's always there. Until one day, you're not. And when you finally stop, when you withdraw your energy, your presence, your yes, the people who depended on your availability start to panic. Not because they love you, but because you were convenient. Because you served a purpose. Because your presence made them feel better. When you stop being functional, they start to call you selfish, cold, distant, hard to love. Not because you are, but because you stopped serving their emotional script. And here's the brutal irony. The more available you are, the less valuable you become. And the more boundaries you set, the more respect you earn. Maybe not at first. Maybe not from everyone. But from the people who matter. The moment you begin to pull back is the moment your real self begins to surface. The version of you that's not desperate for validation. That doesn't explain every move. That doesn't beg for approval or apologize for needing space. You reclaim your energy. You reclaim your mind. And suddenly, you're not reacting anymore. You're choosing, strategically, consciously. That's when you stop being a puppet and start becoming the one who writes the script. Jung didn't believe the psyche was a passive machine. He saw it as an energetic system. And every time you react, argue, justify, explain, you're bleeding that energy into people who will never pour it back. Think of your mind as a bank account. Every time you stress over a pointless argument, obsess over an insult, overthink a cold message, engage with someone you already know is wasting your time, you're spending psychic currency. And by the end of the day, you wonder why you feel broke. Emotionally bankrupt. It's not depression. It's mismanagement. Most people aren't weak. They're just leaking energy in every direction. And the people around them, the manipulators, the opportunists, the emotionally needy, they can sense it. They feed on your reactions. They test you over and over just to confirm you're still easy to pull. But what happens when you stop reacting? What happens when you pause instead of respond? When you sit with the discomfort? When you let the message sit unread, the insult pass unanswered, the invitation to drama expire in silence? You don't become cold. You become sovereign. Silence isn't emptiness. It's precision. It's the refusal to waste your breath on what drains you. It's the quiet understanding that not every battle deserves your sword. You don't have to respond to prove you're right. You don't have to argue to win. Sometimes the loudest message is the one you never send. When you master that, when you master yourself, you walk differently. You speak differently. You become unpredictable, powerful, respected. Not because you demanded it, but because you stopped giving yourself away to everyone who asked. Your peace is no longer up for negotiation. Your silence becomes your strategy. Your presence becomes earned. And in that space, in that deliberate unavailability, something powerful is born. Freedom.